Let's talk about transgender sexualization, or more specifically, about how sexualization is caused, how it is shown, and the consequences of this. First, let me give you some definitions before I get into the explanations of things. Transgender is a term for people whose gender identity is different from the gender typically associated with their assigned sex at birth. Being transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. Cisgender is a term used to describe a person whose gender identity aligns with a gender typically associated with the sex they are assigned at birth. Sexual orientation is a person's emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. Gender identity is one's innermost concept of self as a man, a woman, a blend of both, or neither. How individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. A person's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth. Genitalia are the internal and external reproductive and sexual organs of a person. Sexualization is the inappropriate imposition of sexuality upon a person, whether through objectification, overvaluing, or emphasizing aspects such as the person's appearance and/or their sexual behavior. In some cases, sexualization can also be a defense against uncomfortable emotions. This is especially relevant when considering the conflation of gender, sexual orientation, and genitalia, and its roles in creating transsexualization. Conflation is the combining of two or more things, like concepts, into one. When gender, sexual orientation, and genitalia are combined, it is often in regard to heteronormativity, the assumption that everyone is straight, or cisnormativity, the assumption that everyone is cisgender. In Western society, it is often assumed that genitalia determines gender, gender determines sexual orientation, and sexual orientation is an attraction to a person's gender and genitalia. Genitals is gender, is sexuality. However, this system starts to break down when trans people are included. For example, if a cisgender heterosexual man is attracted to a transgender woman with a penis, is he straight because he's attracted to her gender? Or is he gay because he's attracted to her and she has a penis? The emphasis on the genitalia of a person who is transgender, and assuming that this, along with being trans, determines their sexuality, degrades their identity as a person to that of a thing, their genitals. And since the genitalia of a trans person is used to determine their sexuality, that identity becomes a sexualized one. This is transgender sexualization, and it often leads to viewing trans individuals as being homosexual, sexual deviants, sex workers, or not their true gender. This sexualization can be seen in popular culture when trans people are portrayed either as sex workers, murder victims, or often both. And it is also shown in popular news coverage, such as news coverage about the trans panic defense and the trans bathroom bills. The trans panic defense has mainly been used by heterosexual men in order to claim that the assault or murder of a trans person, often a trans woman, was in the heat of the moment and due to them finding out that they were transgender. It was brought to national attention in 2002 with the murder of Gwen Araujo, a 17-year-old trans girl who was tortured and then murdered by 4 men. While the defense didn't work in this case, it did show how men view trans women, especially if she has a penis, as being homosexual and therefore challenging to their own heterosexuality. Trans bathroom bills came into public awareness beginning with trans children wanting to use the bathroom of their actual gender and not the one designated to them at birth. Coverage around the bills were almost always in regard to the use of women's bathrooms by trans women. The United States has been split in their opinion of who gets to use what bathroom, and opponents often use the safety of women and children as the reason why trans women shouldn't be allowed to use the same bathroom. Their fear was that men might dress up as a woman in order to sexually assault them. This not only shows the portrayal of trans women as not real women, but also as being sexual predators because, since they might have a penis, they are really men and therefore sexually dangerous. When all of this comes together, the conflation of gender, sexual orientation, genitalia, the breakdown of the hetero and cisnormative systems, and the sexualization itself, it creates violence that is both transphobic and sexualized. And in recent years, it has led to an increasing number of transgender murder victims. The photos in this video being many of the victims from the past 2.5 years. In 2015, a reported number of 21 transgender people were murdered. Almost all were women of color. In 2016, a reported number of 21 transgender people were murdered, the most deadly year for trans people so far. Almost all were women of color. And as of June 15th, in 2017, a reported number of 13 transgender people have been murdered. Kendra Marie Adams, who also went by Josie Barrios, is the 13th transgender individual, the 12th trans woman, and the 11th trans woman of color to be murdered so far in 2017.